You know, we have to be honest. Some kids start with more resources than others, but how do we make sure that every child gets a fair shot at success, no matter what their background is?
There was a point of time where my family couldn't even pay the utilities bill.
If you talk to many people who have, succeeded despite their challenges, very often if you ask them, who influenced you, there's always someone that did it. It's almost like there's a human quality that enables that social mobility.
Yeah.
So this kind of scenarios happen in some families, and sometimes it's very, very heart-wrenching to see these kind of stories happening, and we could have done a better deal to support these kind of families.
Hi, I'm Vanessa Vanderstraaten and welcome to Canteen Chats. Now, we hear it all the time. Your future is in your hands. But is it really true? Do some people have an easier path to success than others? And if so, what can we do about it? How can we level the playing field? Now today, we're diving into these questions with a whole panel of guests who can share with us firsthand how the right support can really change lives. Because if there's one thing that we want all parents and all students to know, it's this: where you start doesn't determine where you end. And with that, let's introduce our guests for today. First up, Mr. Shahul Hameed.
Hey, hi. I'm an educator for 25 years. Started off as a geography history teacher, then a HOD humanities, and then eventually a HOD student management. So what we call the discipline master.
Oh, the scary one, the discipline master. Okay.
Yeah, so that journey has brought me into where I am now, and I'm a school leader. I'm the vice principal at Zhonghua Secondary School.
Awesome.
Yeah.
And Sher-li, it's nice to meet you. Can you tell us a bit more about yourself?
Firstly, I'm a mother of two. Both kids are still in the school system. And I'm also the founder of Moms at Work, which is a social enterprise that supports women coming back to work after a career break. And I also sit on the Families for Life Council under MSF, as well as the Compass panel for MOE. Yeah.
Wow, you do a lot.
Quite a bit. Yeah, I'm a typical mom.
Typical mom.
Both of them are
lion mom.
overachiever.
Yes.
And Regina, we've met before, actually. So Regina was one of our assistant directors on Lion Moms, the very first season, a good 10 years ago.
Yes.
Regina, tell us more about yourself.
Yeah, so hi everyone, I'm Regina Wong. So I'm turning 30 this year. So I actually been in the media industry for a decade. So I was the director, scriptwriter in the media industry. Recently, I advanced into a financial advisor. Yeah.
So you've done the career switch as well.
Career switch, yeah.
All right, so let's get to our first big question that we opened with. Now, we know that Singapore's education system is full of these opportunities, but, we have to be honest. Some kids start with more resources than others. There's a very real thing called privilege that we all talk about a bit more these days, which is great. But how do we make sure that every child gets a fair shot at success, no matter what their background is? Shahul, you're a parent yourself and also an educator, so you have lots and lots of kids,
Yes.
I imagine. What can you tell us a bit more about some of the challenges that your students face and what the school can do to support them?
Okay, when they come into school, I think one of the things that we do intentionally is to provide each and every one of the students,
Right.
so that we know where they are from and whether they are having the support that they need. And if they do not have the support, we actually find that out in the early stages itself, so that intentional support is given from the beginning. So for example, just today, I just received an email from one of my HODs. So he actually did a survey of all the Sec 1 students who came into our school. The survey indicated those kids who do not have parental support when they go home, and they are latchkey kids. And there are some of them who have indicated that they feel lonely. So these are the kind of surveys that we do intentionally in order for us to identify those kids that they need the support, so that these kids are actually pulled out separately and after-school engagement programs are actually done. And these after-school engagement programs varies in different ways and means, all the way from sports programs, even cooking, baking. We partner with various organizations in order to give them the kind of environment that they are safe in, so that when they go home after school, there is a support system for them and they feel very comfortable at the end of the day. So eventually, these students that we are talking about, every child in school, especially in our MOE system, is taken care of, profiled, and given the necessary support that they need in order for them to grow well.
Wow. No, that's really, really something. I don't think we ever had that in school. For me, ages and ages ago.
Yeah.
But no, that's wonderful. It's very intentional of, identifying, which students may need a little bit more attention, a little bit more support early on. Regina, you can share a bit more of your background.
Yeah. So from my background, I actually came from a low to middle income family. There was a point of time where my family couldn't even pay the utilities bill. And then we actually got our electricity cut off and all this. And then the next day we then paid off the bills and get our electricity back up. Back then I find it quite fun because there are like candles everywhere, at the living room, at the bedroom and stuff like that. Because my mom remarried, but then I continued staying with my grandma, uncle and aunt. So I think back then my grandfather had a bit of a credit card debt, and then my uncle was not working, my aunt was a hairdresser. So during my Singapore Poly school years, we actually received subsidies from MOE to pay off my school fees, which is quite hefty compared to JC, because JC maybe is like $10 plus, $100 plus. Whereas every semester, if I didn't remember wrongly, SP is like 1,008. So I have to work part-time to pay for transport and food myself.
And bursaries are, I think, a great example of the financial aid, the financial support that schools can provide, that the government provides as well for, the less advantaged students.
Actually, I wanted to share something. So my lecturers actually shared that during the COVID period, where students have to study at home through Zoom and all this. So she actually realized that some of the students, the family background is not that great. So they have to study in the living room, and then as they are listening to lectures, people are cooking, mother are watching TV, and then she observed that some of their classmates, right, actually have their own room, have their own study room, a better environment. And then you can actually see the difference from studying at home. And this really brings us to an awareness that how school plays such an important part for students. At least in school, we are all equals and we have a very good environment to study at.
So that's a game changer. And I believe, Shahul, you have some initiatives around this topic.
Before I go into that, initiatives that we do for our students, I connect with what Regina said about the COVID period of time. So what happened was that when COVID started, we were left with students not being able to come back to school.
Right.
So there were certain schools that were identified, and these schools were told to bring back those students from the low-income families.
Oh, that's amazing.
Right.
Yeah, and we provided the space for them to study. Not only that, we provided them with lunch, and on top of that, we didn't just want them to come back to study. We also wanted to give them some kind of other exposures. So sports was arranged, arts was arranged. So eventually this kind of support.
And actually, I recall that time. So there were kids who would come back to school, but there were also kids who said, "Look, the fact that I don't have a device versus the fact that some of my peers have a device." And I remember MOE took a lot of effort to ensure that they provided that support. I remember behind the scenes, there was a lot of gathering, who could donate.
Who could donate laptops and tablets. I remember that.
So I think it was really, and it was a very quick thing because it all happened so quickly. But if you look at it, it was a very good exercise at trying to make sure that the children don't feel left behind, that they're not singled out. So, whether it's space, whether it's the devices, whether it's the whole concept that there's someone that I can turn to, I think that's all part of it as well.
I think the evolution of it was that what happened eventually, we started make sure that this particular group of students who do not have the facilities stay back. And what happened was that this beautiful program was actually launched where we had a mentoring program. We started to make sure that this particular group of students who do not have the facilities stay back. And on top of that, those students were not even doing well academically and who needed social-emotional support. We also made them stay back. Wow. And our students who graduated out of our school, who are in NYP as well as in NUS, they actually came back to be mentors.
Paying it forward.
Yes.
For the next generation.
Yes. And so there was one group of them who was doing the academic support program. There was another group of them who was doing the sports program. The sports program was supported by the Singapore's Sports SG. And then on top of that, we also partnered with the Cycling Federation. So we were the one of those schools at that point in time. We had bicycles in our school provided for our students. And they had the cycling program.
And they cycle around school?
They do cycle around school. And then we went all the way. We even brought all these bicycles in the lorry and we went all the way to Bonita Barrage and we had a cycling session there also.
I wish I had that when I was 11 years ago.
Oh man, can I go back to school now?
I'm glad that the students nowadays get to enjoy this.
Yeah, and it was actually very supportive of our school leaders at that point in time also.
Right.
Some of them actually cycling, we think that they have the cycles and bicycles and it's just normal stuff. But some of them were so excited. Eventually what we did was that some of these students actually got these bicycles as gifts for their good behavior.
Oh, really?
Wow.
Yeah.
That's so nice
It's
though.
so holistic. Oh.
Yes.
No, but that's so lovely as well. You know, like really the holistic approach, as you mentioned, Shahul, that it's not just about your academic successes. It's not just how well you're doing in school, how well you're behaving in school, right?
Yeah.
But it's about, are you doing okay?
That's right.
Are you happy? Are you feeling confident in yourself? I think it's a huge change to any child.
Yeah,
At that point.
It's so interesting because we're beyond just survival. It's
Yeah.
about the social
Mental well-being of the
Yeah, and I
students.
thought that was really interesting.
Yeah, that's a great way of putting it. It's beyond survival right
Yeah.
now. It's how do we get our kids to thrive? How do we get them to feel like they belong?
I think you guys are getting into the right spirit of things. If they can come back to school and if they love schooling, and I think half of the battle is won there. And their social mobility is just going to spearhead in front of them.
Yeah, you know, in Lion Moms, and my character Minnie, she is a single mom, and she has a really gifted child, a really gifted son, Kai, and it's quite interesting to watch the dynamics play out as well, and the considerations from the child's point of view as well. So I think we've prepared a couple of clips. Let's have a look.
And what makes you think they love you more?
Because they give me whatever I ask for.
And that's love?
I just don't want to be poor, Mommy. Everybody in Charleston goes to school in a nice car and has nice things.
Having nice things and money doesn't make you a good person or a happy one. And the sooner you learn that lesson, the better.
We're poor. I knew it. You shouldn't have sent me to Charleston. At least at Bukit Green, no one laughed at my pencil case.
Kai?
So that clip was about. It all started over a pencil case, and Kai wanted a very special pencil case, and I think if I remember correctly, my character sewed a pencil case for him, and not the best art student ever lah. So not good at stuff like that. But he became very acutely aware that his family was maybe not as well to do, not as financially well off as the other students in the sort of elite primary school like Charleston Primary, and he came before in Bukit Green, and it was a very relevant moment for me as well, because it's so true. You don't raise children in a vacuum, right? They are exposed to not just school pressures or peer pressure, but societal pressure as well. You can see it everywhere. It's now with the internet as well. The world is even smaller, right? You can see what other people have in comparison to what you may not have yourself. Shahul, what would you say to parents who are struggling with this fear themselves?
So if a child actually comes to school and he or she feels that he doesn't have that kind of an advantage compared to the rest of the students, I think we will do our very best to actually identify the needs and give them the necessary support, be it through FAS, be it through uniforms that needs to be given to them in the beginning of the year, and even in stationaries for that matter also.
Right.
And even if we are given FAS support also, there is some kind of dignity in the way that we provide the support.
Of course.
Yeah, so we don't actually identify a student to say that he is a FAS child, and so therefore when he goes to the canteen, when he buys the food, we don't even actually make it very, very visible for the child to actually buy the food because of the support that the school gives. What happens to the parents is a different ballgame altogether. We connect back with MSF. We connect back with Comling. And these Comling officers actually go into this family as family coaches. They give a holistic support all the way from each and every one of the family members are employed, each and every one of the family members are studying. They actually help them to actually enroll them into the kindergarten schools also.
It's something,
Yes.
under the Uplift program, the MOE launches, and MSF also goes in to support. They actually reach out to the family. So I think what was interesting was, as you were sharing, sometimes the child does not tell the school that we need the help. That trying to take away that that fear of being embarrassed is quite a big thing. I think I heard this from my own kids as well. In primary school, they openly, they go through the financial aid. They don't think about it. But by secondary school, I think some of the youths are more conscious of that. And they may say, I don't want to be singled out. I don't want people to know that I have less, right? And I think that conscious effort on whether it's MOE or MSF to try to say, how can we make this such that the child, the youth does not feel that they're different.
Right. So there's less of the singling out, I think, is a big thing. Doesn't feel like they are, a charity case, so to speak.
I think having the right mindset is really very important because, in poly, I also receive aids for my school fees and stuff. I'm telling my schoolmates, my school fees are free because I got this Then they were like, wow, shiok. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. So if you have the right mindset, it won't be an issue to the students, but maybe because I was in poly. And then when you feel really grateful and proud of it, actually your friends will engage you in that manner. If you act in a very inferior way, like, oh yeah, I got this, then they'll be like, oh, then they will kind of like look down on you because you reflect that kind of emotions.
You're teaching them how to talk to you.
Yes, exactly.
I agree with Regina. So eventually it's about mindset eventually. Working together with the family, with the child. I mean, at the end of the day, making sure that they realize what we have is actually sufficient for that particular moment of time. And so therefore, it's about working together and making them realize that certain things may not come the way that they want unless they work hard. You study hard, you work hard, you go into a good job of your choice, and then eventually you will be getting whatever that you need at the end of the day.
Yeah, it's like that saying, right? Some children succeed despite challenges, and some children succeed because of the challenges, right? That makes you grow. And it definitely sounds like there was a, in some ways, an accelerated maturity about it, right? Because and I can totally see it. When I was in secondary school, complete basket case, so neurotic, so insecure. And it took a lot of growing up to realize that, no, I have nothing to be ashamed of, I'm here. I come from a single parent background as well.
Same as me.
So I related to Minnie like right there, So, and I could see all of the struggles and all of the things that my mom had to go through to raise both me and my brother. And maybe there was a bit of this sort of stigma to it when I was younger, a bit more like, I don't have all those kinds of holidays, don't have all those kinds of trips and toys and gadgets and whatever. But now it's like, yeah, I didn't waste my money on that.
I think one of the things that has changed over the time is about the mindset of the young ones, the present generation of students. They are more understanding. I think we have created a generation of students who have built a good character, who look after their parents and who understand the parents' plight.
Yeah.
No. I mean, I think all this is because the schools also give them the same support that they need. Instead of asking for what they do not have, the fanciful item, the challenge is actually the relationship that the parents and the child is having. So many of those students who do not want to come back to school and they are long-term absentees, when we see the pattern is because the parents are not able to control the child or convince the child to come back to school. It could be because of the relationship issues, could be because of the negative peer influence that they have around them. Multiple pathways are just waiting for them, but they're not making use of it. So what we did was that we created a customized, specialized program. So they come in a little bit later to school and then they go a little bit earlier than the rest.
Oh, wow.
So it's a motivation for them.
It's motivation.
That's amazing. Why do I not have that again?
So we actually give it a very fanciful name. It's a Project 5 Degrees. Every one trajectory of change is a big change for each and every one of them.
That's awesome.
This P5D was a very wonderful program whereby we brought in quite a number of students back. And even at that point in time, NUS, we partnered with NUS too. And NUS students, the undergraduates, they also came back to us and they said that they want to support this particular group of students. They coached them in English, maths, as well as sciences. So we focused just on the critical core subjects. So we told them as long as they can come back to school and they are interested in studying, they can catch up. I think that is the most important aspect of giving them the confidence so that they are able to come back to school as frequent as possible.
Can you share with us some more success stories, Shahul?
Yeah, another one more child actually with so much of challenges. He's now a lecturer at one of the polys.
Wow.
Yeah. And then there's another one more child. He's actually working in a boys' home. Yeah, so he's actually looking after those students who are going through. They're giving back. So therefore, you can actually see that this group of students who actually face a lot of challenges along the way, when they receive this kind of positive support, I think at the end of the day, they want to give back to the society. And we were very touched by this kind of very successful stories. And some of them, they never come back to school and we do not give up at all. The whole school community will come together, form teachers, the school counselors, the student welfare officers, the discipline masters, even the principals. All of us will make the home visits as much as possible. Even though when we go and knock on the door and the door is locked, nobody opens up the door, we never give up. Perseverance is one of the things that we normally do. And then eventually we will be very, very happy when this child even comes for the national examination. And that's why we want. Eventually the national examination certificate will give them a pathway for them to succeed in the next phase of life.
The next key to the next door, basically. So I think what's really significant here is that there's no moment that's too small, right, for students and the schools to connect with these students and, make them feel heard and seen and valued. That's something that Regina can relate with, right? I remember you have two very special teachers in your life.
So obviously we can't afford tuition. Back then we have a math teacher. It's called Mr. Lim. So he actually knew that we had a lot of questions about especially A math, E math. So he would be like, okay, I'll be staying back today from 2 p.m. to 5 p.m. Anyone who have any questions can feel free to stay back, and then we can do the homework, and then we can ask him questions. So having this initiative thought out by my teacher, back then we don't really appreciate it. Of
course not.
But as we grew older, and then I thought about it, it actually helps me to excel in my O-level.
Yeah.
But at least math, I got A2 and A1 for O-level. And I think I have to really credit Mr. Lim for taking his time after his working hours to actually do this for us. Because now we are working adult. OT sucks, to be honest. I also have, in secondary school, I also have, my mother tongue and my higher mother tongue is taught by the same teacher. So we call her Yu 老师 lah. So she creates really fun, engaging lessons. We have like Chinese debate. We write compos. He gives very good feedbacks and stuff like that. I think she really propels me to really love Mandarin more, which is why I actually, as I goes into media industry, I started like Chinese script writing, and I do like Chinese drama directing, and a lot of people comment, oh, are you Singaporean? Pure Singaporean? Your Mandarin is so good. So yeah, I think it has to. I think I have to be. I'm very thankful for my mother tongue teacher for giving me a very good environment, very positive environment that makes me really love the language even more.
Did you feel in any way like left behind, or did you feel lesser, or have any negative thoughts about that?
Before the after school programs were a thing, actually my school teachers, we did like whenever we have any question, we just knock on their teacher's room and we will ask them questions, and then they will help us out and everything. So I don't feel like that. I don't think that I felt being left out or anything. And best thing is, just now we mentioned something about communities and peers are actually really important, right? So I think I was lucky. My schoolmate, my classmates, they are all very willing to answer questions and help out whenever I need anything. And I remember I'm very shameless. I love to ask a lot of questions whenever I don't understand anything. So there was a point where one of my biology teacher, he was like, okay, any more question, Regina? If Regina has no more question, that means everyone understand this subject. And whenever I ask question, okay, some questions might sound stupid back in those days, but the kids, my classmate will like laugh it off, and then my teacher will like explain it again and again for me. So actually for me, there is no need for tuition. It is actually just up to me whether I want to study or not.
Right.
Yes. So
no, but you asking questions also is good for the one or two quiet ones in the back who's not catching anything, but thank God somebody asked the question. These teachers, your math teacher and your Chinese teacher, their impact is felt later in life. Not necessarily right at that moment, but later.
Actually, can I just add something? I thought that was very interesting. It wasn't the finances again that made the difference. It was the impact that the educators also had on you. And I think that's the funny thing about social mobility. If you talk to many people who have, succeeded despite their challenges, very often if you ask them who influenced you, there's always someone that did it. It's almost like there's a human quality that enables that social mobility. There always has to be some human influence. It isn't just about the financial aid. Because, you talk about mindset. Mindset doesn't happen because someone gave you money. Some mindset happens because you found a role model. You found someone who believed in you and who said, okay, this is where I have confidence in you. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to give you my time.
I think the power of an educator impact is like butterfly effect.
Yeah.
It's like you don't feel it at first, but the effects comes in like maybe 5 years later, 10 years later. And then I think that's the beauty of being an educator.
It's very touched.
Have you guys faced any situations where maybe things didn't turn out so ideally, or that you have maybe sudden regrets about? Shahul?
It was some of the parents that we want to help, some of them do. The regret that I have is that some of them do not want to pick up the help that we offer them. I think similarly, there's one more story that I have in my present school. So these are two siblings. So the sister as well as a brother. So what happened was that the whole of last year, we tried engaging a mom. She's a single mother. And then they have a grandmother. So the two of them, one of the daughter will stay with the mom and the boy will stay with the grandmother. Okay. So when the boy stays with the grandmother, or even the girl when she stays with the grandmother, they come to school because the grandmother has some kind of routines. Whereas the mother, because she was so busy, she was a single, and she had to make the ends meet. And so she was very busy working. And whenever we had to call her up, when we had to go to her house for a visit, we asked her to come down for a meeting. It's very difficult for us to get that mom. So eventually, because the boy was staying with the grandmother, he was actually coming to school very regularly last year.
Right.
Whereas the girl was not coming to school regularly, and she was in her 4th year. She has to do her A-level examination. So we devised all kinds of ways and means to engage the family, engage the mom. We wanted to meet the mother. Eventually, it came to the point in time that N-level was already nearing, and we still have not met the mother, and the girl was still not coming to school.
Right.
And we lost the girl eventually by her not sitting for the examination. And when the N-level results were out, she had nowhere to go to.
Oh no.
We are telling her if she wants to come back to study, we are more than happy to support her, but it's a regret on our part. I mean, it could have been a better situation whereby if the mother had come forward to actually listen to us and give us the support by asking the child to come to school.
And come up with a plan together.
Yeah. So it's from the same family, it's the brother and the sister. If the brother can actually be well supported by the grandmother and be able to come to school, the same could have happened to the girl.
Yeah.
So this kind of scenarios happen in some families, and sometimes it's very, very heart-wrenching to see these kind of stories happening, and we could have done a better deal to support these kind of families.
I think it's really, really hard to have a solution for that, because if you think about this, as human beings, it's very natural. You want to put food on the table. So I think it would be unrealistic to tell her, stop focusing on earning, but think about your child too. Sometimes the bandwidth is only so much. That's what's probably happening to her. Perhaps in that situation, rather than just going after the mom, I mean, that's my suggestion, is finding another person that can reach out to her.
Well, I think hearing all these stories, I think there's only so much we can do in such cases. I mean, after all, there's only 2 parents against 1 or 2, 3 children. But, educator, they have to take care of like 40 people, 40 students. There's only so much that you guys can do to help out them. Yeah.
Sometimes there's no right answer. And there's no right
but
solution.
I mean, having said that, the positive side of me always feels it doesn't mean we don't stop trying, right? I think if you have a group of 10 and you're trying, maybe 5 you are able to save, 5 you can't. You still go out there and you try. It's the same, with whether you're an educator or not. I think, or whether you are part of society trying to support this group in some way. Yeah.
What's one piece of advice that maybe you would share with a parent or a student who is feeling stuck or feeling lost? Like, what's one key takeaway for you guys? Shahul, maybe we start with you.
Okay, one of the things that I would like to tell every student there is, do not ever doubt yourself. Always believe in yourself. Always seek for help. I think that's for the students. And then for the parents, I think I will tell them too the same thing. Do not think that there is no help in the society. It's about you coming forward to ask for help, and help is actually available in a lot of forms. It's about opening up and telling people around you that you need the support that you need.
Being transparent and vulnerable, right?
Yeah.
Vulnerable to make that connection,
That's
that
right,
sharing,
that's
right? Sher-li?
I think recognize that first, because when you can recognize that, then you start to think next, which is where can I get help? If you don't even want to open up and be open to realizing that the world has changed a lot, there are new things out there, that there are new forms of help, there are new people I can reach out to, you always stay in that little world of yours. For younger people, I think, for children, for youths, I would say this, a bit like what Regina said. I'm not saying that we can create miracles, that there's no miracle solution, but the truth is, if you don't try, if you don't push yourself, if you don't want to have the positive mindset that it's possible, if you keep thinking that, there's always 2 paths in front of you, the maybe path and the no path. But if you always go down the no path, it will stay as no. The doors will always be shut. But if you start thinking, maybe there's a possibility, maybe I sound something out, maybe I ask this, maybe I try. Like even bursary scholarships, I hear sometimes some of my students will say, don't need to try, I'm not good enough. Then I say, you don't know. Maybe no one good tries. Then you'll get it, right? So again, think about it as as long as there's a chance, just give it a shot. There's nothing to lose.
All right. So, we've covered a lot today. And I think what's become really, really clear is that, life is not about where you begin. It doesn't determine where you end up. I think all the sharings here today have really illustrated that point. And, the truth is nobody succeeds alone. Here we have schools and communities and families and, your individual perseverance, your individual mindset and how that's going to bring you to the next chapter of your life. So with that, thank you to our incredible panelists and guests for sharing their wonderful insights with us today. And of course, thank you to our viewers and our listeners for joining us here today as well. Now, if this episode resonated with you, please feel free to share it with someone who needs to hear it. And if you're a parent, a teacher, or a mentor, know that even the smallest actions, the smallest of kind gestures, has the power to shape a life beyond the starting block. Now, don't forget to subscribe, follow us on MOE's platforms, and join us for our next conversation on Canteen Chats. Until then, keep believing in what's possible.